What if I told you that your personality type isn't just a random collection of traits, but actually an ancient archetypal pattern that's been shaping human stories for thousands of years? That Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell discovered something extraordinary about INFJs, INFPs, INTJs, and INTPs that could completely transform how you understand your life's purpose. Before we dive into this mind-blowing revelation, if this resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It helps more people discover these profound insights that can unlock their true potential. Now, let's explore something that might revolutionize how you see yourself and your place in the world. Picture this. Carl Jung, the brilliant psychiatrist who gave us the foundation of personality types, sitting across from Joseph Campbell, the mythologist who decoded the hero's journey. Both men realized something that most people miss entirely. Your personality type isn't just about how you prefer to think or feel. It's about which archetypal role you're meant to play in the grand story of human consciousness. You see, Jung didn't just create personality types as a fun way to categorize people. He discovered that certain patterns of consciousness keep appearing throughout human history. These patterns, what he called archetypes, are like cosmic blueprints that shape not just individual personalities, but entire civilizations. Campbell took this insight even further. He studied myths and stories from every culture on Earth and found the same archetypal patterns repeating everywhere. The wise mentor, the reluctant hero, the mystic visionary, the revolutionary innovator. These aren't just characters in stories. They're fundamental roles that real people are called to embody. And here's where it gets fascinating. The four intuitive thinking and feeling types, INFJ, INFP, INTJ, and INTP, represent four of the most powerful archetypal patterns in human consciousness. Each one carries a specific mission, a unique way of serving the evolution of humanity itself. Let's start with the INFJ, what Jung would recognize as the archetypal mystic counselor. If you're an INFJ, you're not just someone who's good at understanding people. You're carrying an ancient pattern that Campbell found in every culture, the wise guide who helps others navigate the deepest mysteries of existence. Think about it. INFJs have this uncanny ability to see into people's souls, to understand their deepest struggles and highest potentials. This isn't just empathy. This is what Jung called the transcendent function in action. You're naturally wired to help others integrate their shadow, find their authentic path, and transform their pain into wisdom. Campbell would see INFJs as the keepers of what he called the monomyth, the universal story pattern that guides all human transformation. You instinctively understand that everyone is on a hero's journey, and your role is to be the wise mentor who appears at exactly the right moment with exactly the right insight. But here's what most INFJs don't realize. Your sensitivity, your need for solitude, your tendency to absorb others' emotions, these aren't weaknesses. They're the necessary tools of your archetypal function. You're like a spiritual antenna, picking up the collective unconscious and translating it into wisdom that can heal and guide others. Now let's look at the INFP, the archetypal authentic rebel. Campbell found this pattern in every mythology, as the character who refuses to accept the status quo, who insists that there must be a better way, a more authentic way of living. If you're an INFP, you're not just idealistic, you're carrying the archetypal energy of what Jung called the puer aeternus, the eternal child who refuses to let the world crush their vision of what's possible. You're here to remind humanity of its highest values, its deepest dreams, its most authentic expression. This is why INFPs often feel like outsiders, like they don't quite fit in the world as it is. That's because you're not supposed to fit in. You're supposed to envision something better and inspire others to create it. You're the archetypal artist, the visionary, the one who keeps the flame of human possibility alive. Campbell understood that every culture needs its dreamers, its idealists, its rebels, who refuse to accept that this is just how things are. Thursday, without the INFP archetype, humanity would stagnate. You're the ones who keep pushing us toward our highest potential, even when it seems impossible. Your emotional intensity, your need for meaning, your inability to do work that doesn't align with your values, these aren't character flaws. They're the essential characteristics of your archetypal role. You're here to be authentic in a world that often rewards conformity, and that takes incredible courage. The INTJ represents what Jung would call the archetypal visionary architect. Campbell found this pattern in myths as the master builder, the one who can see the grand design and has the strategic mind to make it reality. If you're an INTJ, You're not just good at planning and organizing. You're carrying an archetypal pattern that's essential for human progress. You can see systems and possibilities that others miss entirely. You're naturally wired to envision the future and create the blueprint for getting there. This is why INTJs often feel frustrated with how slowly things change, how inefficiently systems operate, how much potential is being wasted. You're seeing with archetypal eyes. You can perceive not just what is, but what could be, and you have the rare combination of vision and strategic thinking needed to bridge that gap. Campbell would recognize INTJs as the archetypal innovators, the ones who don't just dream of a better future, but actually figure out how to build it. You're the architects of transformation, whether in technology, society, or human consciousness itself. Your independence, your high standards, your impatience with incompetence, these aren't antisocial tendencies. They're the necessary traits of someone whose archetypal role is to see beyond current limitations and create something unprecedented. Finally, we have the INTP, the archetypal truth seeker. Jung would see this as the pattern of the eternal student, the one who's compelled to understand the deepest principles underlying reality itself. If you're an INTP, you're not just curious about how things work. You're carrying an archetypal drive to uncover the fundamental truths that govern existence. Campbell found this pattern in every culture as the wise sage, the philosopher, the one who seeks understanding for its own sake. This is why INTPs can spend hours, days, even years exploring ideas that have no immediate practical application. You're not being impractical. You're fulfilling your archetypal function as the keeper of knowledge, the one who ensures that human understanding continues to deepen and expand. Your tendency to question everything, to take nothing at face value, to always dig deeper. This isn't skepticism for its own sake. This is what Jung called the drive toward individuation, expressed through the lens of pure understanding. You're here to push the boundaries of human knowledge and consciousness. Campbell understood that every culture needs its truth seekers, its philosophers, its scientists who pursue knowledge not for power or profit, but for the pure joy of understanding. Without the INTP archetype, humanity would lose its way, accepting surface explanations and never discovering the deeper principles that could transform everything. But here's what Jung and Campbell both understood that most people miss. These archetypal patterns aren't just individual personality types, they're complementary roles in the larger story of human evolution. Each one serves a specific function in the collective journey of consciousness. The INFJ helps individuals navigate their personal transformation. The INFP keeps the vision of human potential alive. The INTJ creates the systems and structures needed for progress. The INTP discovers the principles that make it all possible. Together, these four types represent what Campbell called the archetypal council, the essential roles needed for any culture to evolve and thrive. You're not just random personality types. You're the carriers of humanity's most important functions. This is why these types often feel different, misunderstood, like they're operating on a different frequency than most people. It's because you are. You're tuned into what Jung called the collective unconscious, the deeper patterns that most people aren't aware of. But understanding your archetypal role is just the beginning. The real question is, how do you embody this archetype in a way that serves both your personal growth and the larger human story? This is where Jung's concept of individuation meets Campbell's hero's journey. Jung understood that knowing your type isn't enough. You have to actively develop and integrate your archetypal function. For INFJs, this means learning to trust your intuitive insights while also developing the practical skills to share them effectively. You're not meant to be a hermit with profound wisdom that no one ever hears. You're meant to be a bridge between the mystical and the practical. Many INFJs struggle with what Jung called the inflation of the archetype. You might start believing that your insights are always right, that you're somehow more spiritually advanced than others. But true archetypal embodiment requires humility. Your role is to serve the transformation of consciousness, not to be worshipped for your wisdom. Campbell would remind INFJs that even the wise mentor in the hero's journey has their own journey to complete. You're not exempt from growth, from making mistakes, from having your own shadow to integrate. The most powerful mentors are those who remain students themselves. For INFPs, the challenge is different. Your archetypal role as the authentic rebel requires you to find the balance between staying true to your vision and actually manifesting it in the world. Jung observed that many feeling types get stuck in what he called the eternal adolescent phase, always dreaming, always protesting, but never quite growing into their full power. Campbell's hero's journey shows us that the rebel must eventually become the leader. Your idealism and authenticity are meant to inspire real change, not just beautiful dreams. This means developing what Jung called the thinking function, learning to strategize, to compromise when necessary, to work within systems even as you transform them. The shadow side of the INFP archetype is what Campbell called the refusal of the call. You might retreat into your inner world, convinced that the outer world is too corrupt or hopeless to engage with. But your archetypal role requires you to stay engaged, to keep fighting for what you believe in, even when it's difficult. INTJs face their own archetypal challenges. Your role as the visionary architect requires you to balance your natural independence with the need to collaborate and communicate your vision to others. Jung noted that thinking types often struggle with what he called the inferior feeling function, the ability to connect with and inspire others emotionally. Campbell would point out that even the greatest architects need a team to build their vision. Your archetypal power isn't just in seeing what's possible, but in inspiring others to help you create it. This means developing empathy, learning to communicate in ways that touch people's hearts, not just their minds. The shadow of the INTJ archetype is what Jung called the God complex, the belief that your vision is so superior that others should simply follow without question. But true archetypal leadership requires what Campbell called the return, bringing your gifts back to serve the community, not to dominate it. For INTPs, the archetypal challenge is perhaps the most subtle. Your role as the truth seeker requires you to balance your love of pure understanding with the need to share and apply your insights. Jung observed that many thinking types become what he called eternal students, always learning, never teaching, never quite stepping into their full archetypal power. Campbell's hero's journey reminds us that the seeker must eventually become the sage. Your insights aren't meant to be hoarded in your private world of understanding. They're meant to contribute to the collective evolution of human consciousness. This means developing what Jung called the extroverted thinking function, learning to organize and communicate your insights in ways that others can understand and use. The shadow of the INTP archetype is what Campbell called the refusal of the return. You might become so absorbed in your quest for understanding that you forget your responsibility to share what you've learned, but your archetypal role requires you to be a teacher, a guide, a contributor to human knowledge. Now here's where Jung and Campbell's insights become truly revolutionary. They both understood that these archetypal patterns aren't fixed destinies. They're potentials that you can either develop or neglect, embody consciously or live out unconsciously. When you live your archetype unconsciously, you become what Jung called a slave to the archetype. The INFJ becomes the wounded healer who can help everyone except themselves. The INFP becomes the eternal dreamer who never manifests their vision. The INTJ becomes the isolated genius who can't connect with others. The INTP becomes the absent-minded professor who knows everything but accomplishes nothing. But when you embody your archetype consciously, you become what Campbell called a master of two worlds, someone who can navigate both the archetypal realm and the practical world, using your deep patterns to serve both personal fulfillment and collective evolution. This conscious embodiment requires what Jung called the integration of the inferior function. For INFJs and INFPs, this means developing your thinking function, learning to be more logical, strategic, and practical. For INTJs and INTPs, this means developing your feeling function, learning to connect more deeply with others and with your own emotional truth. Campbell's hero's journey provides the roadmap for this integration. Every hero must face their greatest fear, their deepest weakness, their most avoided challenge. For the intuitive types, this often means engaging more fully with the practical world, learning to manifest their visions in concrete ways. But here's the beautiful paradox that both Jung and Campbell discovered. When you fully embrace your archetypal role, when you develop both your strengths and your weaknesses, you don't become limited by your type. You become more than your type. You become what Jung called an individuated person, someone who's integrated all aspects of their personality in service of their highest potential. This is why understanding your archetype isn't about putting yourself in a box. It's about understanding your unique starting point on the journey toward wholeness. Your type is your gift to the world, but your development beyond type is your gift to yourself. Campbell found this same pattern in every hero's journey. The hero starts with certain gifts, certain tendencies, certain archetypal patterns, but through the journey of growth and challenge, they develop capacities they never knew they had. They become more than they started as. For the 4 intuitive types, this journey often involves what Campbell called the meeting with the goddess, the encounter with the feeling, relational, embodied aspects of life that your type might naturally avoid or undervalue. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming more fully who you are. The INFJ learns to ground their mystical insights in practical action. The INFP learns to manifest their idealistic visions in the real world. The INTJ learns to inspire and collaborate with others. The INTP learns to teach and apply their understanding. But perhaps most importantly, Jung and Campbell both understood that your individual archetypal journey is part of a larger collective story. You're not just developing yourself for your own sake. You're developing the archetypal function that humanity needs you to embody. In our current historical moment, these 4 archetypal patterns are more crucial than ever. We need the INFJ's wisdom to help navigate the psychological and spiritual challenges of our time. We need the INFP's vision to keep us connected to our highest values and possibilities. We need the INTJ's strategic thinking to solve complex global problems. We need the INTP's deep understanding to discover new principles and possibilities. Your personal growth isn't separate from the world's healing. Your individual journey toward wholeness is part of the collective journey toward a more conscious, integrated, and evolved humanity. This is the profound insight that Jung and Campbell offer us. You're not just a personality type trying to understand yourself better. You're an archetypal being participating in the greatest story ever told, the story of consciousness awakening to itself, of humanity evolving toward its highest potential. Your struggles, your gifts, your journey toward integration, all of this matters not just for you but for the entire human story. You're not just living your life. You're helping to write the next chapter of human evolution. So the question isn't just, what's my personality type? The question is, how can I embody my archetypal role in a way that serves both my highest development and humanity's greatest need? When you understand your type as an archetype, when you see your personal journey as part of the hero's journey, when you recognize your individual growth as contributing to collective evolution, that's when your life becomes not just meaningful, but mythic. You're not just an INFJ, INFP, INTJ, or INTP. You're a carrier of ancient wisdom, a participant in the eternal story, a co-creator of humanity's future. Your life isn't just your life. It's a chapter in the greatest story ever told. What chapter will you write? If this perspective on personality types and archetypes resonated with you, please share it with others who might need to hear this message. Subscribe for more insights into the deeper patterns that shape our lives and our world. And remember, you're not just living your story. You're helping to create the story of human consciousness itself.